Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffery, and I have another amazing guest here today. Glad to have her on the show, Rachelle Dene Poth. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here with you on the show. It's good to see you.
Yes, great. Okay, so let's talk about, first of all, normally what I do is I ask you to introduce yourself to the listening audience. I think I share a lot of your listeners. You just give a brief description of who you are and what you do.
Yes. So you already said my name, Rachelle Dene Poth. I'm an educator from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I actually teach full time. I have taught French, but currently I teach Spanish and also a course that I love. I also have an 8th grade course that's STEAM, What's Next in Emerging Technology. Besides teaching, I consult full time and do a lot of writing, and I'm also an attorney. So I keep pretty busy and active in education. I've always loved learning and just, I don't know, I guess I don't like to have free time.
Well, first of all, let me just say, I cannot keep up with my day. And so I'm just amazed at how you're able to do it. So how's the start of the year going for you?
It's been interesting. It comes around so quickly. I was so busy this summer, and I'm always really busy in the summer between conferences or learning opportunities. But it feels like every year it just comes around quicker and quicker. And I'm fortunate that I teach, Spanish. I'm the only Spanish teacher. So a lot of the students that I have, I know them except for usually the Spanish ones, but sometimes I have some of those students in the 8th grade. But this year has been a little bit interesting so far because we got new computers and I have new textbooks and new systems. And I don't really use the book a ton, but my tech is not working all that great. I lost probably 80% of the files and documents and presentations from my whole time I've been at the school. I don't care so much about because I can recreate those, but I had student projects on there, those and things that I can't get back. So it's a little bit stressful and my board keeps shutting off. It's so funny. The kids and I, we're just laughing about it because I get everything and they know how organized I am with things and then it switches. And so it's great to see the kids, to get back into that, flow. But every day it's just so funny because we're like, what next? So basically a typical
school year beginning. That's good. And you're still excited about it. So that's good. So you can wear many hats. You could be an attorney. You could be a consultant. Why choose teaching and what motivates you to continue to go in the realm of teaching?
Right. So it's funny you say hats. I could go grab a couple to put on right now and I'm not kidding. No, a lot of people actually think that I was an attorney first and then I went to become a teacher, but I have been teaching for a long time. And then when the job that I've been working in since the 1900s, I was actually, I think, teaching for 5 years and was always interested in the law. And didn't tell anybody that I took the test to see if I could actually be admitted to law school and got the scores back, had no idea what that meant. So I just forgot about it. And then probably 3 years went by and I thought about it again and I had to retake the test. One of them had an evening program and I applied. I didn't tell anybody and I was accepted. I'm like, oh boy. So I did that while, I was in the classroom full time every day. And then 4 years, 4 nights a week, I passed the bar, was 2006. If it had not been for that law school experience, I know I wouldn't be in the classroom today. I would not be doing the things that I'm doing today because that experience completely changed who I am now from who I was as an educator. It's interesting. People will often say didn't that cost you a lot of money? I'm like, yeah, still paying on it for 15 years later. Isn't that a waste? I'm like, no, there is a value on education, like a financial, what you put into it and the money that you spend, but it's what you take away from it also. So that led me down a path to where I am today. It's interesting how things weave together because in the consulting piece, people say, well, why aren't you practicing law? And I'm like, well, I kind of am because when you're in the classroom, you have to be really good at analyzing things or looking at different aspects and different angles. And then the consulting work that I do, it's it brings in all of the things that I love. So I enjoy it. I really do. And I've said, if I left the classroom it wouldn't be to go and teach somewhere else. It would be to work with other teachers to impact students and to do that kind of work. So I like to keep busy.
And your impact is quite large. Like, you have an amazing Facebook group that spans about, I think it's about 21,000 teachers that's in that group, and a large Twitter following. So looking on, I'm going to go to your blog because you just wrote something just recently for tips to back to school. If it's okay, we can talk about that. So you got a couple tips here, and just like reflecting on the past year, like, what's the best way to prepare for a new school year?
Yeah, I think that is probably different for everybody, because for myself, I don't stop all summer, and I try to think about what is something that I did last year that went really well, and what is something that was on my list that I didn't get to. And there are some things, like one thing that I'm doing this year that I really wanted to do last year was like project-based learning. And I had done that for many years before, but then, schools were closed, and it was like everything was changed for a period of time. And so I just got away from that. So I always think about some goals, first of all. And then I think about, what does my classroom actually look like? And if you see my classroom, it's kind of a mess in a sense, because there are a lot of things on the walls. There's student work for my class. There are pictures and things that I bought for my classroom. And then there's things that students drew or gave to me. And I love creating that space where I hope that they'll feel comfortable in. So I consider that. And I know a lot of, especially elementary teachers, they're in their classrooms in the middle of the summer and getting it set up with all these themed events and things. But those are just some of the things, thinking about the prior school year, what went well, what did not go so well, what kind of went okay, but you can improve upon. And then depending on, like, if you're like me and you teach the same content area, just different levels, then I try to find new resources. I also think focusing on getting to know students at the beginning of the year. And this is coming from somebody who, I didn't do that at all. I was very much teaching the way I had been taught, which was like, all right, day one, here's your rules, here's your papers, here's all this. And again, back to law school. After that, I'm like, okay, that could wait. Like, I want to get to know the kids. And so years ago, I made up some icebreakers, which some people hate icebreakers, of course. Some of my students were like, what are we doing? But for the last couple of years, that's where I've started. And it does make a difference to get to know them and for them to get to know you too. And again, I wish I would have known that years ago, but I know it now.
Yeah, my second question was going to be, how do you prioritize building relationships with students? Being a language arts teachers, kids have to take your class, but not necessarily, depending on, I don't think it's important. Like, how do you start that relationship building process? If I was a new teacher, like looking for advice, like, how could you help me do better?
And I love how you said that, because when it comes to a language, there are some schools in some states that require high school graduation, and there are some schools that require it for high school graduation, but a lot of them don't. And for many students, if they want to go to college, a lot of colleges want students to have had 2 or 3 years of a language. So I do have the mix of students that are there because, like, yeah, I want to learn Spanish and it's great. And my family, I have friends that speak it and I want to learn it. And then, I have to. So at the beginning of the year, the first day, and I do this in all of my classes because they change over the summer and throughout the course of the year, but I ask them random questions, and sometimes I play a this or that game. And sometimes it's one I make up. And my good friend, our mutual friend, Melody McAllister, and I used to do some of those a lot, or would you rather. But I get index cards and I pass them out to the students, and I will ask them questions. And one of them is like, why are you taking Spanish 1? And I will get because I have to. Or, did you choose to take this? No, it was put on my schedule. But then I'll ask them some funny, curious questions, and then interesting facts about them. And then usually tell them a little bit about the class, but then I read those and see where I connect with the students. Then I share it with them the next day, and we have laughs together. And then I let them know a little bit about me too. And I make sure to, as best as I can, because sometimes you can't get out of your room, but greet them at the door and just be real. I mean, with me, I always say, like, what you see is what you get. And I use a lot of humor in my classroom. I'm still coming off of like the summer. So last week I even said, I said, I don't have necessarily like my normal filter because I'm being a little snarky, but it's not in a bad way. It's just kind of funny to do that. And when you can connect with them on that level and be authentic, that really goes a long way. And it took me a while to realize that, but I know the importance of that now. So I'm going to keep on rolling with it.
Yeah. And I like how this is following definitely my path of questioning, because my next one was about social emotional learning and how you would connect that into your class. And looking from the start of the year standpoint, it seems like that you already had those embeds in. Like, when did you begin to prioritize? I don't know, you said it was after law school, but like, what specific instance caused you to prioritize that social emotional connection with students in order to get them to take your class seriously?
Everything you asked me will probably be like, well, I wasn't doing that, or I thought I was doing that, but I was completely wrong and had no clue and just started. And SEL is one thing that truthfully somebody said to me about probably 7 years ago, could be 6 years ago. So what are you doing in your classroom for SEL? And I looked at them and I went, oh, well, what are you doing? Because when they said it, I had no idea what they were talking about whatsoever. The education background that I had to become a teacher was in the last century. So we didn't have the preparation that's available today for the aspiring educators. So I didn't know. And there's so many acronyms in education. So when I pushed the question back to them, they named a couple of things and I made the connection. I said, oh yeah, I'm doing some of those things too. And then I went and I Googled SEL and I found castle.org, dove down there and learned all about it. And ironically, I have been doing presentations on that for like the last 5 years too, because of the importance. I didn't understand. I was doing those things. And I think, and the one thing that I'll say is a lot of times teachers are already, and educators, whatever your role, you're already doing a lot of these things, but you don't realize what it is because you're not starting it because, oh, I heard I should be focusing on SEL. Like, you're already providing those opportunities. And in my classroom, I had started using station rotations and getting the students to collaborate and have them set some goals like the project-based learning or using choice boards and a couple other things that students really tended to kind of struggle with a little bit as far as pacing, and it's challenging, or that fear of failure. And so using some of those different methods helped me to address those 5 core competencies of SEL. The first time after that whole question, I did the little research, the one day I looked at my classroom and it was all desks lined up in rows. And I realized, I went, this is terrible, because the kids that are in the back of the room, they don't get to connect with anybody else. If they have a question, they might not feel comfortable raising their hand and asking, and they're not building relationships, and I can't get to them quickly. So I pushed all the desks aside. I had no idea what I was doing. They came in completely confused, as was I. And I figured it out. And about 3 months into doing that, I had students tell me, oh, I like Spanish so much better this year than last year. And I was like, okay, I don't know how I feel about that. Explain. And they said, because we are working with different people on different days. We're not all doing the same thing at the same time. I'm able to ask for help. I'm able to give help. I feel that I'm getting to learn about my classmates more. And then I felt like I was able to teach each student, and I understood where they were in the learning process every single day, even though I wasn't the one teaching them. So I realized I didn't have to stand in the front and talk at them for 42 minutes. So they were building all these skills. And even later on, a couple of the students said they felt like they were part of a learning community. And I saw such a change from the relationships where they weren't saying kind things to each other, and they didn't want to talk to certain students in the classroom, or they were just so full of doubt and fear of making mistakes, which didn't even need to use technology. It was just putting them in different groups. It wasn't always with their friends. It just evolved. And I thought, wow, like, this is amazing. So yeah. So I learned from what I didn't know and evolved.
And, since the pandemic, behaviors have been a thing. I don't want to get too political, but I'll just say that behavior seems to be one of the issues why teachers are leaving the profession. What advice could you give to control behaviors? Because you talked about a lot of things, breaking your class up into groups, just, letting them have cooperative learning opportunities in just different areas. but some people are afraid to do that because of classroom behaviors. How do you make sure that your kids take that seriously?
Yeah, again, I didn't do this years ago, but even just this year, I said to one of my classes about the importance of respecting others. And you might not always agree. There's ways to have a conversation where you disagree. Or I said, you might not always like everybody, but you still, people deserve respect, and they should feel comfortable in the space that they're in. And I did have a student at one point a couple of years ago that was, minor misbehavior. And it was not that the behavior had been done yet, but I heard them talking about this behavior. And so I pulled the student aside and had a conversation. And I said, I'm not telling you what to do, but I said, you always want to think about the impact of your actions on other people. Is it going to be confined to just you and one other person? I'm involved. The other person is involved. And I go down the whole chain of who and all of the time. That is taking away from the learning opportunities for everybody else. And it's causing a lot of other time constraints and like all of the things that are involved in the behaviors when you go through whatever your school's discipline policy is. If everybody just kind of goes with the flow in a sense, if you do have a problem with somebody or something, you can always come talk to me. I said, there are teachers in this school that are there to support you. I said, it may not be me, like it might not be a person, but there is somebody out there, one of the teachers. I said, you need to figure out if you feel like you're having an issue or whatever's going on. I said, be honest and speak to the person, but find some person to go to. And I said, when that happens, like, we don't have any problems. And you're right. Like, there are a lot of educators that have left. And I'm fortunate that, over all the years that I've been teaching, the students will say, how many DTs have you given? And I joked, I said, what's a DT? And they're like, you don't know what a DT is? And I said, no. And I say, well, if I give you a DT, that's punishing me because then I have to stay after school too. And it's just kind of like a funny thing. But I think when you speak to them on that level and they think beyond themselves and realize the impact, as with all things, like the impact of what your action is going to have on others, I think that makes a difference. And in the tone that you take with it also, I think that helps when you set, as they say, set the stage at the beginning of the year, but also incorporate it into an ongoing kind of conversation. Like a couple weeks in, people are stressed out, whatever's going on, like, hey, is everybody feeling okay? Have a system in place where if students need to talk to somebody, it's going to vary for every school, but my school, we have some great teachers and students. I often hear say, like, I need to go talk to so-and-so, or they come to me, like, can I talk? Like, I'm having this moment. And I've had a lot of those interactions over the years. And it's stressful for me too, because you're like, where's this going to go? But you have to be able to work through challenges. And as we are there to support students, you have to help them figure out, because throughout life, they're going to have things come up, even in the workplace. So you got to learn how to deal with it progressively. So that's the best I can give.
Yeah. And I love that. And speaking of progressively, when I first started teaching, I never thought that there would be something called AI in school, artificial intelligence, Chromebooks, and all the rest of that stuff. And I see that you've written a book recently on artificial intelligence. Have you started to incorporate that into your classes?
Yes, for the last 7 years almost. It has been, yeah, I know. It's very interesting because 7 years, because I have been writing blogs for Getting Smart, and they always had themes. And often what I would write about, like one of them was the SEL, and I ended up writing an article about how you can bring SEL to every classroom. And I had some pictures of my students. But for January of 2018, one of the topics was AI. And in August of 2017, I was thinking, everything that I'm writing about, I hope, is helping other teachers, but I'm not pushing myself to learn more. And so I dove in, did the research. The article came out in January of 2018. In that STEAM class, I started to teach about it, and I didn't know a lot. I just knew enough to get started. Took a course with ISTE that summer, and then just continued to do research on it. And then I put in, it seems like for conferences like FETC, you put the proposals in like May or June or something. You're like, oh, I have until January to get this ready. And next thing you know, it's like the end of December, you're like, oh, I have to do that presentation in a couple of weeks. And so I put a proposal in to do a session at FETC and some other conferences. And so I was one of few for probably 5 years doing presentations, and teachers were very interested. There were resources available. I mean, ISTE has great hands-on guides to get started and some other platforms. But of course, in the last year and a half, since ChatGPT and all the other generative AI, there are a lot of people talking about it and people diving in to it more. So it's been exciting. And the book, I've written a lot of blogs over the years, but the book, kind of funny, I started it 3 years ago because somebody said, you should write a book about it. Because I took a pause on writing and they said, you should write a book about AI. So I started, and then I stopped because I decided to enter the doctoral program because I felt a little stagnant in my learning. And I said, good thing I stopped, because I would have missed like all of this more recent stuff since ChatGPT and everything. And it's a hard thing to write about because it does change so much. So, and also my doctorate was focused on the need for professional development relevant to AI and other emerging technologies. So I've been completely surrounded by it and doing a lot of presentations and training on it, but I love it because it's interesting and it's something that I like to learn about. And I know that there's never enough time for teachers to dive in, and there's so much to choose from. So if I can do the work for them and provide a resource that's going to help them, then makes me happy.
Yes. I do remember you being one of the first, I think oh man, I can't think of my other man's name, but he has a podcast as well. But anyway, you two were the first AI. I didn't realize it was 2018, but I know it was right after 2020 when I noticed. Mm-hmm. So I was like, wow, I never really had been involved with that. So you wrote the book, you got a doctorate, you have a thriving passion for education. How will using AI in the classroom enhance learning today?
Oh, that's like the $1 billion question at this point. No, I say there's possibilities and responsibilities, because the initial reaction when ChatGPT and everything came out was like the plagiarism and the cheating. And I'm like, you've been able to cheat since I was in high school. Like, I'll give you $5 to write this essay for me. I'll copy it, whatever. It's streamlined the process now because anybody can use it. It's not just in education. I mean, all areas of work, but with specific to education, even with personalized learning. Again, we could do that pre-technology. It took longer. And so the way that I look at it is, usually I think like a couple of different areas. One, from the teacher side, things that are very time consuming is taking time away from you working with students or being able to give them authentic, meaningful, timely feedback, and or also taking time away from you to work with colleagues and like have those the connections like that, because there's never enough time in a school day. So if you can give students a quick assessment using an AI powered tool that they do something in 5 minutes, and based on their responses, they're getting exactly what they need, because the AI can see, oh, they keep missing whatever your topic is, and it gives them extra practice. And then after that 5 minutes, you see what every student did, the whole class, and you can take all that time that you save. There's nothing wrong with paper assessments there's multiple ways to see where students are in learning, but something like that where the students are using it, they get the feedback, and then you can go and have one-on-one conversations or totally pivot what you had planned to do, because you see like, wow, they totally did not get that. So I need to go back, which is fine, because now you have the time to do it and you can address and work with all the students. So that's one of the ways. But also I think because students are, whatever they do after they leave high school, whether they continue education or go into the workforce or whatever the choices are, AI is everywhere and it's not going away. It's not something new. It didn't just happen in 2022. It's been back since middle of the last century. But, the statistics, like even the World Economic Forum, out of the top 10 job skills outlook from 2025 to 2027 changed. And number 3 is now AI and big data. And employers are looking for employees that are skilled and have knowledge about AI and how to use it. So in the education space, it's going to enhance what we do. It's going to enhance in a sense of what students do, because they're going to be able to look at things and evaluate them really critically. Or maybe it's a tutor for them. For some of my students, and you have students that are afraid to ask questions. They have, in a safe educational space, a platform, they can have their own personal tutor, a chatbot. So they're learning to use it safely, ethically, and responsibly, and how it can enhance and not replace and get them to plagiarize. So, I mean, there's lots of possibilities, but there are definitely a ton of responsibilities too.
Yeah, I love your possibilities and responsibilities. And I really don't want to put you on the spot, and you don't have to answer the question, but is there one particular one that you like more than others, or you want to pass on that question?
Oh, no, it's funny. I always find a way to like hack the system and because one time somebody said like one person to give a shout out to, and I picked EduMatch because I, name all the people. I'm like, well, that's one in an organization. There's lots of people in there that are impactful in my life. Right. So, but there are a lot out there, and I will pick one that I really like. And and again, there are probably 5 that I talk about all the time, but one that I definitely talk about all the time is it's EduAide. And for a couple of reasons, they originally both from Pittsburgh. The founders taught across in the hall from each other, both named Thomas, both still in the classroom. And that for me helps with when teachers and educators are worried about the platform and data privacy, to know that you have educators who are still in the classroom and seeing what is needed to help teachers, students. And, they offer a lot of different resources, very similar to some of the other tools that are out there, which lots of them, and they do great things too. So I have to go with the hometown one, but because the fact that they are still in the classroom and they're very responsive to and proactive about making sure that, the data privacy. And I tell teachers all the time, like, if you have to go on a scavenger hunt on a website to find what their policies are, then you probably want to pick another website. But they have an AI disclaimer and everything is there for teachers to see. And it's easy to use, and $5.99 a month, which comparatively speaking, I mean, there's a lot to it. So that's the one.
Well, you can suggest one more. But I haven't heard of EduAide, and I think I'm going to take a look into it. $5 a month.
Yeah. And if you get like the full year, it's less than that. But I've had them on my podcast twice. I had the one Thomas and I had both Thomases. And I said, well, what do I call you? So I had to call them by their last names. But if anybody gets a chance to go back and find that episode, just to listen to like how they're doing and why they're doing what they do and what goes into it, it's really insightful. But another one that I like it's pretty unique is Snorkel. And that one it's SNORKL. And that is, if anybody used Flipgrid, then Flip, it takes it's a whiteboard, and the students can open up their device, like teacher creates an activity. So maybe they put math problems, like I put where students had to talk about something in Spanish. I mean, there's lots of things that you could create, and you put it on the board for the students, and then they record themselves solving the problem or writing it on the board space. And then the AI generates feedback and puts a timestamp, also gives them some suggestions. And then the teacher can give feedback also, whether, text or audio or video. And they are now building out a library where there are example activities like that to do. So when my students did that, it was awesome. But with Snorkel, the students get to see what the AI says and how it supports them. And I don't know, it's fun. So if you're at a conference and you see 2 men in purple shirts with goggles and a snorkel, that's Jeff and John. That's Snorkel. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So I will definitely be trying out those 2. We are now, this is the end of the show, but you have a lot of stuff that I want to plug real quick. I want you to tell us the name of your podcast, because you have a couple, and you give me the latest book. And where can I listen to the audience find you at?
Okay, so we're going to give my main podcast, which is the Thriving EDU podcast, which I'm in season 5. And for most of the seasons, a lot of times I was talking to myself, but I've had a lot of guests recently. So it's nice to actually talk to somebody besides yourself. And that is the podcast. My most recent book is How to Teach AI, Weaving Strategies and Activities into Any Content Area. And all my books, I mean, that's through ISTE, but that and all of my books are on Amazon. And then I'm very consistent on all the socials. My handle is RDENE915, which is first initial, middle name, and birth date. I followed my parents' suit back in the AOL days, but if you want to check out my blog, just put the rest of the address around that. And if you want to send me an email, just add the Gmail. But if I can help anybody with anything, or you want to share some ideas with me, I'd love to learn from people too. And I'm grateful for you for a chance to chat today.
First of all, let me just tell you how amazing you are. You have, ever since I met you a couple years ago, you have been consistent and you're so easy to talk to. You have always, I remember the first time I stuck a mic in your face and I was like, hey, can you be able to please?
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
I was bad. I was just trying to learn. But, I really appreciate just how genuine you are, because I can tell that you love education. You love to learn. You have just been somebody who I look up to just from the way you are completing your doctorate, being a lawyer, being a teacher, writing books, writing blogs. Then you also offered me, nobody knows this, but you offered me, hey, you can share your stuff with my people. It's okay. Just send me what you do. And not a lot of people do that. So I want to tell you, thank you. I know you're a genuine person and you have my stamp.
Well, you are definitely a genuine person as well. And I'm thankful for your support, because you always are sharing things that I am posting. And that's what it's about. Like, it's just lifting others up, sharing other stories, because sometimes people are hesitant to do it themselves. And when somebody else does it, like, you never know. It might just help one person, but it might just be that one person that needs it the most. It's going to keep them in the classroom, because I've had so many times where I've had conversations with people where they read something, they're like, that's exactly what I needed to read. So yeah, anybody that's listening, I do have that Thrive in EDU community on Facebook. It's for educators. Like, please share blogs, podcasts, books, events. That's what it's for.
Yeah. And one last plug, because we mentioned EduMatch, and EduMatch was very important to both of us. Dr. Sarah Thomas and Mandy Freilich, who has came on the show as well. And now I have you on the show. I have Mandy on the show. So I just want to give a shout out to that organization. I love that organization, and they are for educators.
Oh my gosh. I would not have as many friends as I do had it not been for EduMatch and Dr. Sarah, who is amazing, and Mandy as well. I mean, just it's a great community for sure.
Yeah, great community as well. But thank you for your time, and you have a great day, okay?
Thank you.
The education landscape will have unprecedented innovation and creativity. With original ideas flourishing everywhere, educators can look forward to being engaged in more meaningful ways than ever before, thanks to authentic approaches that provide just the right dose of individuality and imagination. At the same time, ethical considerations will become increasingly more important. So you have my word that I will stay fresh, original, and authentic. So like we always do about this time, let's collaborate, communicate, and educate with the best educators in the world right here on Flipboard EDU Podcast.